This year is all about growth, growth, growth.
Growth, growth.
Going for growth.
Growth.
Growth. Unlock growth.
Growth.
To grow our economy faster.
Prime Minister Christopher Luxon and Finance Minister Nicola Willis have made it very clear the government's focus for 2025 boils down to that one word. At the moment, New Zealand is tracking behind most comparable countries in economic growth, and data released this week shows unemployment rose by 33,000 people last year, the highest annual increase in 15 years. In the lead up to May's budget, one of the changes being considered under the government's growth agenda is a change to New Zealand's corporate tax rate. Now have a look at this. At 28%, New Zealand has one of the highest corporate tax rates in the OECD. Of these 38 economies, only 5 have a corporate tax rate higher than New Zealand's, and except for Australia, all of those countries have much lower GDP per capita. It's also worth noting that Australia has a special rate for SMEs, which is lower than New Zealand's. Robin Oliver from OliverShaw is an expert in tax economics and is with us this morning. Kia ora, Robin. Thank you for being with us. In broad terms, how important is a country's corporate tax rate to economic growth?
It is important, part of the tax system. We've got to, if we want to grow the economy, we've got to get more investment, which increases productivity, increases wages, makes us better off. If we tax investment and business income highly, we're not going to get it. And you've pointed out we've got a very high tax rate compared to OECD, 28%, the average 24, 25. But small open economies like ours are generally much lower. The Prime Minister points to Singapore and Ireland as successful small countries. Well, they've got tax rates of 12.5, 17. We're 28. We're not in the ballpark to be competitive.
Why is New Zealand's high relative to other countries, and to what extent do you think that might be stifling investment and innovation?
It's a choice we've made, worrying about fairness issues and so forth and distribution of income. But you take the Irish and the Singaporeans, they've decided to have low taxes on investment and business income. And they see that as increasing investment, increasing productivity. In New Zealand's case, every 1% increase in GDP, we get $1.5 billion of revenue. So they go for growth. We've decided to go for more equality and being poorer as a result.
So you have estimated that every percentage point of corporate tax brings in about $250 million in revenue. Given the fiscal constraints New Zealand faces at the moment, can we afford to lower the corporate tax rate?
That's a challenge. The fiscal constraints we have are certainly challenging. You know, if we reduce our corporate tax rate from, say, 28 to 25, that's $1.2 billion of revenue lost. Well, that's not going to cut the mustard, and we've just lost $1.2 billion of revenue. It's not going to, we're nowhere near competitive. If we go down to, say, 18, that's $4 billion of revenue. Now, you can say, well, we'll go for growth and we'll get that $1.5 billion for every 1% of GDP, but that will take time. So the government's got choices, New Zealand's got choices, and you can take a risk on the fiscal side, but I think more logically you need to look at other options as well. Focus on inbound investment where the tax system is really damaging and attracting globally mobile talent, the foreign investment fund regime and so forth, or just simply allow more deductions for investment in plant and machinery.
Ah, right. Yeah, that's interesting. I'll ask you about some of those options in just a moment, but to go back to that point you were making regarding tinkering, if you like, with our corporate tax rate, taking a few percentage points off the 28% where it stands at the moment. Effectively, you're saying in order to really meaningfully drive investment and innovation, you've got to go hard or go home. So you've got to really significantly cut the corporate tax rate. But if you were to do that, presumably there would be a lag in terms of actual revenue, right? Because even once you'd made the change, you then have to wait for the innovation and investment to come through, which might take years.
Yes, a bit of a nick and tuck cosmetic surgery is not going to do it. You've got to go bold, and because of the fiscal position, you've got to look at being targeted, which would cost you less, but then go on the road to actually becoming internationally competitive along with Singapore and Ireland.
OK, talk us through some of those other options, Robin. What do you think might be alternative options for driving economic growth in the short term?
In decreasing the taxes we put on inbound investment, so foreigners coming here, we have what is often perceived to be penal taxes on them. We don't allow interest deductions. If you allowed interest deduction so much, if you allowed more of that, relax the rules, that would help, particularly in infrastructure areas. We can look at the foreign investment fund regime, which the government is looking at. We can look at making it more attractive to invest in plant and machinery, which is what we want. We don't want people investing just in land. Yeah,
right. So how would you make that switch? How would you incentivise investments in plants and machinery and potentially more productive assets than residential property?
Well, at the moment, we allow a deduction for if you are investing in a $1 million plant. We only allow 10% of that to be deducted, or 5% every year. And that's following the economic life of the plant and machinery. But businesses are looking at a 5-year perspective, so write it off over 5 years, 20% every year rather than 5 or 10%. That would cost you $500 million, something like that, possibly more doable fiscally.
Are there bigger structural changes that you think would drive economic growth over the longer term, changes to GST or income tax?
Well, I'm not a politician, but if I had a free rein, I would change the mix between GST and income tax. And at the moment, it's 2/3 income tax, 1/3 GST. I would go 2/3 GST, 1/3 income tax. That would allow us to reduce our rates on that, but obviously it would be a 30-odd%, 28% GST rate. Well, it's going to be difficult to persuade the public that their food costs are going to go up by that amount. So these are real social issues New Zealand has to confront, and stop sort of whinging about your next door neighbour has made a capital gain or whatever, and start thinking about, do we want to go for growth and all the benefits that gives us? We've got to reduce our tax on investment and mobile talent, or do we go for a more equal society and be poor as a result? Do we go north? Do we go south? You can argue both ways, but it's a stark choice we have. And at the moment, we've gone for being poor.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating to see what is decided when it comes to some of these big decisions. Thank you so much, Robin. We really appreciate your time. That's tax expert
You're welcome.
Robin Oliver from OliverShaw with us this morning.